Well, Chris, welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself a wee bit and the film we're going to talk about today?
Oh, so my name is Christopher Andrews. I'm a writer and director. I worked my way up through the camera department until I was an operator, second operator, and then some life things happened. I got sick, which meant I couldn't operate anymore. And through that process, I started writing. And I had a couple of years of kind of rehabilitation, and I wrote my first feature screenplay through that process. And then, yeah, and I started working as a screenwriter, um, and wrote Bring Them Down, which is the film we're going to talk about. About the first draft about 8 years ago when I was writing another film for Creative England called Scuttler, which is a British Western set sort of between Manchester and Northumberland, and it was going to be my first feature film, and it was just proving too expensive.
Okay.
It was coming. There was like a marker of like 1.7 million at that point for like the first feature film. Like Beast was about that sort of space, and so you couldn't really go above that sort of budget at that time, and it was coming in at like about 5 million, so it was far too expensive.
We've over.
So I was just looking for something else that I could, that could be my first feature film, and the idea of Bring Them Down, which isn't that much cheaper, but it's got sheep as opposed to horses, so that kind of brought the budget down a little bit, and yeah, and that was going to be the first one.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I can see how horses would be more expensive than sheep.
It's like anytime you put horses in things, people really. I mean, I guess maybe in this country, in the States, it's a little bit different, but yeah, if you put horses in every like, there's just yeah, alarm bells go off. It's like a room, and the siren goes off, and they're like, cut the horses.
Oh God, I'm rewatching Peaky Blinders at the moment, so now I'm thinking how
Yeah,
that'll be.
yeah, they got more money than us.
Yeah, they got them. Right, well, back to Bring Them Down.
Yeah,
Um, I am a woman, obviously, and it's very toxic male rivalry. And I've heard you speak about this in interviews, but I wanted to speak to you about sort of framing everything. It's very much a male lens, and it's the women that are missing that seem to have that. That's why they're so gnarly.
yeah. I think it's about I mean, it was always about absence of a parent, and that influence that it can have, or that missing person's influence can have on a person, or on a family. I was sort of I lost my father when I was quite young, and that's the sort of specter of his being has always been sort of quite ever present over my life, for good and for bad, and so yeah, so the it was the idea of a missing parent, but mixed in with this idea of toxic masculinity and what is passed down. So it was kind of, so like my father was the one that was absent, but it was about this relationship, or this kind of like what you what you get from your parent, or from your father, in a father to son, um uh passing, and what and how that can affect you. So I was trying to sort of weave both things into the same story. But then, yeah, the idea of having this kind of female figure that is now missing, which is kind of the linchpin that has held them together, and now they've kind of their toxicity as she was almost like the barrier, the dam that stopped it from becoming all encompassing, and now it is all
Yeah.
encompassing, and her absence is Susan's only in the film for a very short space of time, but her resonance is huge. And I think that you get to sense of who her character is by experiencing Caroline. And
Yeah.
NJ's performance, I think, is extraordinary because she's got a lot of work to do, being the only real present female character throughout the whole narrative, and what she's experiencing and what she's reflecting both to the past and to the present and into the future is really important to how all these men
Mm.
live.
Yeah. No, she's pivotal, and you sort of you feel yourself crying out for more of her, but at the same time crying out for her because being in that environment, I mean, it there's no release.
No, no. And it was interesting. There was a conversation I had about writing. I write when I write the narrative from everybody's point of view as like long form, as a like these little novellas. And Caroline's was fascinating, as was Peggy's. And there was a conversation that I had about it being, what about if we just tell it from Caroline's point of view and sort of, yeah, I always get these sort of like wake up in the morning. It's like, right, when things are you're like, oh, I've had enough. Right, what can I do that's gonna shake it all up and wake it all up for me? And we have talked about that being a really interesting project of seeing it, solely from Caroline's point of view, and picking it up maybe in a slightly different part of the story and pushing it through and see what that where that takes her, and what, because I feel like she's on the precipice of starting her life into something that could be really exciting, an adventure. But
Yeah.
she's also got a lot of stuff that she's got to get rid of, and
Yeah.
work through. This aggression and this violence and toxicity has infected her too. She deals with things in very similar ways, and it's we're talking into the space of violence and how it affects people, and it does, it's like a virus. It gets inside you, and
Mm.
and once it puts hate in your heart, it's really difficult to have control of yourself in.
Mm. No, I completely agree, and and it's ever present, sort of in the film. And I was watching an interview earlier with you talking about it, and you were saying that so with the language of the film, you sort of move. You've got handheld, and then you've got dolly, and then you're on a track, and then you're handheld again. And I think the whole film is very high pressure. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sort of touching my heart. So
yeah,
was that what you wanted? That violence, that seediness, and then build that into the language.
yeah, completely. I mean, what I love when I in from sort of cinematic experiences, to whether it's be a thriller or it be a horror film. If it's a horror film, I want to be terrified. If it's a
Mm.
romance, love story, I want to be crying. I want it to be like, watching Ali McGraw, die and like feel completely like torn apart. It's like a love story, or if it's a relationship, marriage story, you want it to be Kramer versus Kramer, where you like completely have your guts ripped out. I want to feel visceral experiences, and when you're writing things and you're making things, you got to be, it's about why are you staying with it, and it's about what you're trying to explore, what the questions that you're asking yourself, and the characters and the audience. But it's also about the energy and about the visceral nature of it. And I think that I have a problem where I start stories quite hard, and I just go really hard at it, and sometimes it's hard to sustain that. It's like, how do you up what how do you play with the balance of, but it's always about tightening that screw so the wood starts to splinter. That's kind of what gets me excited.
Yeah.
But but it's like, and then transferring that into image was always about, we start with Christopher. It's locked off. It's very composed, and not pastoral, but because it never has that nature. But you set him in the landscape, and I didn't want to do lots of GVs. I wanted him to be in that landscape.
Mm.
So we're seeing character and world at the same time. And then as he sort of moves, because his part of the story is a mystery. He's trying to work out what's happening to him, and to the farm. And as he finds things out, we start to move the camera, so it moves into track and dolly. And then when he enters the field at night, and it turns into this kind of horror film, we go handheld, and it has the energy. And then as we come back into the story with with Barry, with Jack, we stay handheld because he's young and he's energetic and he's not feeling connected to the landscape, and we reverse that language, and we as we
Yeah.
push through, and as he starts to become more errant and the decisions that he makes become more serious, then we track and dolly, so we're slowing it down till in the point where he, someone says to him he should have been a shepherd. He's like, we're like, okay, you're stuck, you're trapped, and we put him in a prison. And it's to sort of, bookend it, but to sort of reflect their characters, their personality, and the way they feel about the landscape that they're in.
Yeah.
And I think that having that, it relates to the way that they're feeling. So it relates to you. So it was never meant to be something that you would see. It was never like stylistically, it was always, I wanted there to be no edge to the frame. So you feel that you're immersed in you're sort of leaning forward into the story, and therefore the movement or lack of movement affects the way that you feel, as opposed to feel like you're reading it like here, you're reading it here or in
Yeah.
your stomach.
No, that makes total sense. And there were other bits as well that sort of give you that split. I mean, we've got the Irish language. So the fact that, some of them speak it and some of them don't. We've got, Jack, who's portrayed, he's younger, he's a bit more vibrant. And then we've got Michael, and there's the scene with the car. So there's obviously the youth and that coming up, and Michael's there and he's just got his shepherd's hook and he just like smashes the window.
Yeah.
And so you've got warring on so many sides, which I thought was so impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, as I mean, we started writing it. I started writing it 8 years ago, and the world, it's never that much of a different place, but it feels, more pertinent in discussing war and our position in it, and our responsibility in that space. And it was always like, once you've started a war, what does it take to finish a war? And it can be quite simple, as like saying you're sorry,
Yeah,
holding your hands up and saying that you've done something wrong. But why is that so difficult? What is it about, you know often the majority is men, and what is it, the pride, or the lack, show signs of weakness? What is it that stops people from saying that they're sorry, or are admitting that they're wrong? But it's always talking into that space, and about how we affect that, as ourselves, like starts over something so innocuous and so trivial, and so it's such it wouldn't be an imposition to somebody, but it turns into something so bloody and awful.
yeah,
And it's about how we treat one another, how you treat the person that you walk down the street next to, and how much space you give them, or when you're driving your car, and if you let someone go, or saying good morning to, like how you can, like the ever decreasing circles of being nice, and doing something decent to somebody, and how that affects them, and how that ripples through their life, and the day, and the opposite. If you're a bit shitty with someone, and then suddenly, what's that going to do to the next person they meet? And also thinking about seeing people as human beings, and giving people a little bit of slack is like one of the interesting things that comes out of the screenings, is the conversation about violence, and it affecting animals and human beings. And we don't seem to have any problems with the violence affecting the physical violence affecting human beings. The whole violence that they live in is a big sort of conversation. But I
yeah,
think the way that it like physically affects animals, those being kind of the innocents in war, is kind of what we were alluding to. But with the human beings, we kind of we lack empathy for people. And there's like, we're creating a world where we're more and more kind of insular, and more protecting our immediate, and I think, um, that we're just trying to sort of open that up as a conversation, not to not in any way to say what is right and wrong, or what people should or shouldn't do, but just to have a conversation and a dialogue about, our responsibilities and what we feel they are or should be.
yeah. But you just take it down a very dark, dark
Yeah,
path.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't help it. It's like it's an affliction. I am like trying not to kill people at the end of films. now. It comes a lot up a lot in meetings. Like everyone's like sort of tentatively waiting to find out what happens to people as I tell
I
them a
like
new
the
story.
darkness, though. I think you can
Yeah.
explore a lot in that darkness.
Yeah, yeah, and that's like, and the people that work in those spaces, the shepherds that the shepherds that we talk to, and we did an extensive research of traveling down the west coast of Ireland and meeting shepherds and farmers as we
Mm,
relocated it from UK to Ireland. And that's why we know when the language became really important because everybody
yeah,
spoke Irish
yeah,
on the west coast. But we're talking to them, about the stories, and they all could see that these kind of beefs happen between families, and they've lived there. Like in Cumbria, most of these guys, their families have lived there for 400, 500 years, maybe more. But what you don't see, and I think we tried to allude to it in the film, is that there's a collective responsibility. They all
mm,
look out for each other. Their sheep are on the mountains, and there are no walls, there are no fences. Their
yeah,
animals are hefted to that landscape, and you look out for each other. So that's why it's such a big thing. What happens with the animals is like it's so meaningful, and it's so um, transgressive what Jack does. And put that into motion, and it feels so innocuous where it's only initially two animals that he's taking, and but it feels, but for that landscape and for that break of trust,
mm,
there was a story about in the north of England where a huge farm that had smaller farms backing onto it, and they were taking other people's animals. They already had more than anyone else put together, but they were taking animals off people because it's greed, it's like, and then they were passing them off at auction. But people know because you can line up a sheep and a shepherd will be able to take their sheep
sure,
out because they can all same breed, all from the
sure,
same place. Because they breed them all differently. And as soon as somebody noticed, and then someone else noticed, it completely shut them down because nobody will buy off them ever again because there's that relationship, that circle of trust has been broken.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you could make a nice shepherd film about how they all help each other, but
You could, but I don't think I want to watch it.
no, that's the thing.
When I was watching Bring Them Down, I'm sure somebody's mentioned this to you. Do you know the 2015 Icelandic film Rams?
I do, yes.
Um, that immediately came to my mind, and I don't know if it was just, it was the sheep, but it was also the landscape and the bleakness. That was what really came out. What influences were you drawing on? Because this is your debut sort of feature. Did you know that you wanted it to look like it did? And I also heard you had a lack of rain, which is unusual for Ireland.
Oh God, it was a nightmare. I mean, it wasn't because it's hard to get people out of cars if it's really rattling down and windy and horrible. So it did us a lot of favors in that. But in terms of, I just wanted it to feel visceral and have that kind of elemental feel. And it was cold. You can like there's a sequence where Chris is sliding down in these peat stacks and you see you don't really know what it is, but it's all the ice breaking up. It was perishing cold, but we just didn't have any wind and we didn't have any rain, are two things that I wanted to create a soundscape out of. Like that film had come out like 18 months or so after I'd written the first draft, and I don't really ape people's work in that way, and like looking into those kind of in that sense, and similarly there's all these films that I'm influenced by, but when I'm talking to people about it, like if I'm talking to Nick, my DP, or Fletcher, the production designer, it's more about paintings and
Okay.
photographs, and
Yeah.
and rather than films, because I don't want it to feel in any way like anybody else's. I just want it to come through us, and through me. And I think that I have a very sort of strangely specific way of like talking about the language that and where we put the camera, and it came through with Nick. And what I do is I talk a lot beforehand and talk very little when we're actually, unless we've got a problem, because I talk. Nick is incredibly good at listening and absorbing, and then sort of like presenting it to you again, so that you know what we're trying to achieve. And so,
Yeah.
and then I give the actors freedom. Again, I talk to them a lot before we're on set, but when we get there, I don't want to spoil what they're going to give me. So I keep my mouth shut until, and we block it. And if they have a question and I know the answer, I'll answer it. If I don't, then I'll say I don't. But generally, they just allow them to find their space. And then I turn around and Nick is in the right place, so it's great. And then you can start, you're just keeping it going. But I think in terms of like the wider, what I'm trying to sort of reach for is 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 something which feels grace, like a moment of grace. So I'm very interested in transcendental cinema, which is a terrible thing to mention in meetings, so I never do. But it's like if you're talking about films, it's fine. It's just like you can hear the safe locking. If you like, where you're like, well, who are you influenced by? Bresson and Dreyer, and they're like, oh no, sorry, mate.
No, Netflix says no.
No wonder it took 8 years. But but those kind of, and those filmmakers, Bresson or Tarkovsky is science fiction. Bresson did escape films and crime films, and they use genre, which is what I love. I
Mhm.
love those filmmakers, and I love 70s American cinema and new wave, often new wave cinema,
Yeah,
or Korea. I love genre films, and I love what genre can do and allow you to move towards. It gives you a space which you can push and you can pull and you can find character in a way that is quite unique, and you can put people into unique situations. Um, and so therefore I'm looking for these kind of spiritual journeys of characters. So that's why a shepherd was very important. That's why deconstructing the parable of the good shepherd is really important. It's my growing up in quite a religious um, world of Catholic and Anglican, and the friction that had, and but then having a strong sense of my own sort of desire to understand spirituality and my connection to the other people and the world that I live in is sort of deconstructing kind of man-made religion, or that kind of structure, and search through it for something which is a bit more spiritual, and explore that for the characters because of their relationship with animals,
yeah,
with the landscape. Chris is the character is so at peace when he's on top of the mountains, and you have
yeah,
this like God rays coming down. It's like it's kind of special. So it's trying to lean into that, and those filmmakers are extraordinary, and often took a long time to sort of warm up into sort of creating their craft. So it's trying to find a way of being able to push into that space. Paul Schrader the same, kind of what he tries to, certainly early on in his career. I think he's really sort of pushing into that world. Freaking as well, I think, you know, The Exorcist, I think, is like transcendental masterpiece. It's not. You watch a horror film, it's about a man's loss of,
yeah,
for me, man's loss of faith, and how
yeah.
traumatic that is, and that search for faith and that search for connecting with humanity. And I think that I find that it's like spiritually, in terms of how it makes me feel about human beings, really quite special and amazing, and also terrifying. Yeah.
And terrifying. But
Yeah.
I think that's what you do with Michael. The film didn't go where I expected it to go. I'd made sure not to have seen anything or sort of read anything really about it. Um, I didn't expect him to go as mad as he does.
Yeah. Yes.
But I love that he does. It's and like you said earlier, it's such a small little thing, not opening that gate, which blows everything up. But there's everything that's simmering, there's everything that's underneath.
Yeah.
And you just bring that out in every part. And yeah, his performance, it blew my mind.
He's extraordinary. I mean, he's really, um, I think he's incredible actor, what he's capable of and how he can transform himself into anything. Um, also the way that his craft, the way that he approaches things is so considered and so smart. But he's just got it's the same with Barry and on all. I mean, the cast across the board have been extraordinary. Um, Chris has that thing that's special where he can feel the whole. He can feel that he is that person. There's that rage, uh, torment and torture that's inside him. He kind of is there. You can see it sort of bubbling away like lava, and you get these little moments where he just allows you to see him. There's like a little crack in his facade, and then he shuts the door again. And he's just I think he's incredibly special. Um, and to be able to do that and also speak in a foreign language, and
Yeah,
then when you're speaking in English,
absolutely.
you're speaking in a really difficult accent, which there's been a lot of examples of that not going very well. So that in itself is incredibly brave to put
Yeah,
yourself in that, in that firing line. It's
yeah. A lot
uh
of my family's Irish, and I was watching it, and I was like, no, they're good. They're good to go.
yeah, no, it was incredible. I mean, we like some of the Irish crew that didn't know who Chris was. They was like, where did you find him? It's incredible. I was like, found him in Connecticut. And Al Grip thought we'd found an amazing Irish actor. And Al Grip has lived in Ireland for 30 years, or 25, 30 years. And he's from Connecticut. So his mind was completely blown. He was like, I don't know what's going on.
All right, I got a final question for you.
Yeah.
Obviously your BIFA nomination, for
Oh,
debut director.
yeah.
What's that like?
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I just didn't have any expectations at all. Like the bar that I set. 'Cause you delivered the film and you've worked really hard for an awfully long time, and then like for a long time until we knew we were going to be in Toronto, and that was going to be the start of the journey of introducing it to the world. I was only remembering the bits that like sticking your head, the things that didn't go right. And so I was really started kind of getting myself in a bit of a spin. And then, screening it in Toronto and sitting there with Barry and Chris and Colin and Hannah, composer, and NJ, and them loving it and it responding so well was like one of the most transformative experiences. Like apart from becoming a father, it was like it's up there. I was like
Yeah,
it changed me as a human being, and it was so wonderful. And so this whole journey since the beginning of September has been extraordinary. And then to be nominated for a BIFA is it's just incredible, and it's such a strong year. Like,
it's amazing.
it's a huge compliment, and I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
I've had to buy a suit as well because I
And the
don't have a
view,
suit.
and you're sat in the same category again. There's two Irish language films, which I
Yeah,
think is
yeah, which is
amazing.
completely, and just shows you it just shows you what audiences, we've for years people have thought that that wouldn't sit, and even
Yeah.
when I was talking about the Irish language for this, and there was a conversation about, but it's, will audiences want it or respond to it, and they completely do. I mean, we screened by accident. We had a screening um a few months ago, and they projected the wrong version and it had no subtitles. And then I did a Q&A and everybody thought I was really brave, like, this choice that you made. And it was like, it's not a choice. But people really loved it. And they were
Yeah,
like, they found it fascinating about what you understood and what you didn't understand about how and the language of the image was pulling them in. But I think, for Irish cinema, which is on the up, and they've got some of the
yeah,
greatest actors in the world, and
amazing.
for what Kneecap have done for the for
Yeah,
the Irish language, and what hopefully this can do too. I
yeah,
just hope that it means that more people want to start making movies there.
absolutely. Well, look, Chris, I've got to go. You've got to
No,
go.
it's yeah, yeah, I do pick the kids up.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure.